All right. So my name is Hala Alawi, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, I am thrilled to introduce you today to today's event with Blake Z. Rong, reading from I Am Not Young and I Will Die with This Car in My Garage, which released August 28th, and Gad Kaynar-Kissinger, reading from Rescue Mission, which released September 20th. Both poets' books can be purchased both through your local bookstores and online. And of course, the books can be ordered on Atmosphere Press's website at atmospherepress.com/books. Please see the links in the chat. At the end of the event, we will have time for your questions. So throughout the event, if you have any questions for our poets, go ahead and type it in the chat and we'll make sure it gets asked. During the reading, please keep yourselves muted to keep extraneous sound at a minimum. And in the meantime, you can definitely use the chat for praise and comments. As you may have experienced over the last year and a half more virtual events, technical issues can happen, but if they do, we'll do our best to resolve them as quickly as possible. So thank you in advance for your patience. And one last note, we at Atmosphere Press appreciate your support today and of course, always. And if you have a manuscript of your own, we'd love to read it. So feel free to submit your work to books@atmospherepress.com. Again, thank you so much for tuning in and supporting Blake and God today. Let's get right to it. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our first reader, Blake Z. Rong. Blake is the author of the nonfiction work Beautiful Machines, Gestalten 2019. His short stories and poetry have appeared in Poetica Review, Vagabond City, Slant, and Gazelle magazine. A former automotive journalist, he has driven across the US 4 times. He currently lives in Brooklyn with a cat named Moose. Blake, the virtual podium is yours.
Moose is over there somewhere. He's ignoring me right now.
Maybe he'll make an appearance later.
Yeah, we'll see. Thank you for that introduction. Yeah, I forgot that I wrote half of that, frankly. So yeah, it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be have the support of Atmosphere and Cami and everyone in general here. And yeah, I have a couple. I'm gonna start with a couple shorter one-off poems, and I have a 5-part poem I think I have the time to read. So I'll end with that. Okay, so this is the book cover. And that's a note that I found out. Great. This is called The End of the World Exploratory Committee. We are seagrass and white foam. We are the shrieking of seagulls this far inland. We are plastic bags caressed from flimsy trash bins, released once again into the wild where we belong. We are at the mercy of our prey. I want to be a cat like water, to slink into any form, shape-shifting, naked and hungry. Eyes open like saucers, pulling my knees to my chest, teeth and claws sunk into my temples. Filtering through bookshelves, listening for breath, jumping at the sound of unlocking doors. House flies drawn to the smell of my sweat. I press my eyelids closed, like squeezing blood from quiet stones. Here, let me try again, fueled by sweat and lubricated with pauper's blood, inking the corners of dark rooms left bare, vulnerable to material resonance. Our skin is hungry. Our enemies will greet me with howls of hatred. Who will raise the first stone? Who will be the cause of all my regret? Who will sing bird songs at the end of the world? There are particular American cruelties hardwired into our veins. Watch me, just watch me catch this rubber bullet between my teeth. Human treasures captured for all eternity, stuffed and mounted for our slack-jawed posterity, because our ears still ring with their damned batons. We want life, we seek breath, but we expect calamity. Give us another reason to break. We see you, we hear you, but we can neither confirm nor deny. This is the end, we have confirmed. Our instruments have never lied. The ships arise from the ocean floor, and the ghosts that haunt your building are coming back to collect their rent, and the memories of the dead will brush your skin as they walk past you on darkened streets. And in 2019, in the end of 2018 and the beginning of 2019, I went to Asia. I went to a few cities China, and I went to Singapore, and I went to Tokyo. And I wrote this poem when I was in Tokyo. And it was 2019, which is funny because that's the year that was predicted to be in the book and the movie Akira. If you've ever seen that, it was supposed to be the year of the destruction of Tokyo that year. So I saw some street art inspired by Akira, which is really fun. But I had to think about a poem for that. So this is called Song for Neo Tokyo in the Year of Its Destruction. Have you got color in your cheeks? You hear the silence on the other end. You discover that you are made of flowers. At a press conference, King Ghidorah apologizes for the rampage, bowing his 3 heads before the podium. Today we will paint a mountain that owes us nothing. Come up for air, come out of Shibuya Station, thinking foolishly, that's real air you're breathing. Tomorrow the tabby cats will whisper directions to the floor in Cebu where the gemstones are hidden. Thin plastic films reflect the coming disaster. Plucked on a whale stream, the city becomes human in its unraveling. Do you hear the silence on the other end? Have you got color in your cheeks? And then here's one I wrote about, there's a city in China called Dalian, which is up on the northeastern coast, and my uncle lives there. And it's kind of this beautiful mountainous city that's right up against the coast, and it kind of reminds me of San Francisco a bit, minus the human misery that's in San Francisco. We're probably still there. And I went there in January when it was really cold and desolate, and they have a beautiful boardwalk that's full of all these like buildings that are supposed to look like Versailles and all these European buildings. There's like a replica of the Rialto Bridge from Venice, and it's just very bizarre. So this poem's called Cloud Castle Sea. In Dalian, where the mountains drop down into the edge of the Yellow Sea, you will find a miniature Versailles, a hall of mirrors, Eiffel Towers and chateaus, Duomos and piazzas, Canalengos and Pontes de Rialto over still concrete pools, entombed in ice where the skate lines cross. Plastic bottles jutting out like icebergs, each building a shell defiant against rusty battleships and forlorn theme parks, in time and space. Emptied this late season under slate gray clouds, person nose against the glass, witness dust and plywood like the gaps between stitches that you can never sew up. From the castle over Xinghai Bay, gilded in wrought iron tires and fleur-de-lis, once private Neuschwanstein, 19 floors up, facing superhighways and suspension bridges, the mouths of the tunnel bound for parts unknown, nowhere here, nowhere else. All is past and gone. Truly great men look to this age alone, but you outrun your own history long enough, and you end up in someone else's past. And I think I will do this longer work right now. It's called Fallen Cosmonaut. Part 1. Catch me with a bullet between my teeth. I'm magic, swerving on the sidewalk like it's the Puerto Rican Day Parade, like I'm swinging a pocket watch from a gold chain from my snakeskin belt. Listen, baby, I'm Superfly TNT. I'm the guns of the Navarone, a bad Moto Guzzi, a bat's crystal wing that's gone, long gone before that crimson morning comes. Listen, baby, I'm on that death trip like Iggy Pop, sold out at the Pontiac Silverdome with my name up in lights. 10 meters up, now 100, now 1,000, now 223,000 meters past the Carmen line until I ain't got the weight on my chest no more. I got scars on my fingertips that point to where the treasure lies. I got the keys to the city, the keys to the kingdom. I'm the reason why they changed all the locks. I'm the reason you gasped with your body hole. I'm a snake, a desert rat, crawling the dry and dusty cracks to get back to you with my own blood in my mouth. I'll snap my fingers and I will break your heart. I will be returning with blood on the blade. So this is part 2. Behind imperfectly closed doors, white paint sweating on the walls. I thought about the toil behind every grain of rice, shadows that pass across the back of a cat asleep. The man from Ljubljana follows me through Baikonur, mouth twisted pale like a wax-laying moon, stalking the iron runs of the cathedrals, launching pads that bear the name of my most beloved friends, those who could never betray me. Seeking my own immortality, I took the hand of the rabbit girl, but it would never come to hold. Sitting cross-legged in the field, watching the ants up their ziggurats of dirt, carrying grains of sand gingerly in their pincers, like it was the end of the universe. Shall they falter or fail, and I, vengeful Hammurabi, would snuff them out with my fingers. One fell swoop like a prophecy. I expect calamity after all. Survivors upside down my index finger, the last to see their comrades alive. Short summer days grant little mercies. They never knew how close to death they were. Binary systems hardwired a 0 that flips to a 1. Now the anttails dot the earth like so many polka dots. Now I live in the grass. Now I am become the golden patchwork. Now the blades wrap my limbs in twain. 3. They will tell of how I died, powerless and cold, encoded in rust, cursing my native tongue until my blood vessels popped, breaking promises to myself. How good were you at saying goodbye, I ask, my shame still on my lips. Oh, to place that distance between us and the world below, darkened sky eternal. Once I had naively asked for the stars, and having now witnessed them, they hardly compare to the dazzling comets of your imagination. 4. The Politburo has spoken. The premier will wrap my memory inside ribbons of disinformation. Kaynar-Kissinger, that coward, has nothing left to say to me. Get me on the horn to the cosmodrome to curse this devil craft. I am the signal flare from a sinking ship. I am the first field ablaze when the golden horde comes. I am the zigzag line of red from an open mouth. I am the dead language on the tip of your tongue. I am the stick of dynamite underneath the bandstand. I am a tin can silhouetted against the moon, a ghost who averts disaster by meeting it head first. But I shrink away like a leaf or a shadow to the wayside. And this is the final part 5. Someday they will make a documentary about your life. They will follow you through the mirage of asphalt-tinted yellow, a shiver before a final stroke. Any semblance of a breeze is anointed by God, yet they fail to deliver their forgotten mercies. This year, you will forget about mercy, but rather survival, tracing my many black-tarred snakes, squiggly failures. In the film's final act, you filter slowly through a crowd. Take a deep breath. Don't think too hard, and put on your breathing mask. If I can't ever see you again, maybe I'll wash up in West Berlin, where the night sky reveals itself, a thick-fingered hand to lift my chin skyward. To be lionized tomorrow means nothing if you can't savor it today. Try to reach your head above the waves and grasp with your lungs for higher ground. Look up. Something's coming for sabotage. It's written in the stars. And I'll probably do one more, and that should be my time. I'm gonna do the last poem in here. It's called A Dream. Someday you would take an errant step in the tall grass and fall into the realm where you are a king. But until then, you check your pant legs for ticks, curse the dampness in your socks, inhale resentment like wood smoke, then venture forth into the undergrowth. Someday, under a red sky, you will command the fog in the far trees, swirling like steam off an apple pie, resting off a fairy tale windowsill. Write your art in the steam of your breath until the light fades, and your solitude, like whiskey hugging you like a cat that forgets its own size. Someday you will find the path through the woods that takes you back to the front door of your noxious dreams, and you will knock, and there will be someone to welcome you with open arms, and you will collapse like the black holes of a billion stars, a billion empty distances in your field of vision, limbs wrapped around each other like the hydrogen-filled bladders of collapsing zeppelins, white-hot trellises of irony where no steel-blued frost to winter can ever harm you, and you will wake up, and you will wake up.
All right. Thank you so much, Blake. I
Yeah.
can't remember exactly what the line was, but the one about outrunning history so fast you become part of someone else's past. Oh my God, that one gave me chills. But anyway, so Yes, thank you again, Blake. And our second reader today is Gad Kaynar-Kissinger. So Gad is a professor in the theater arts department at Tel Aviv University, a dramaturg, editor, actor, director, and drama translator. He has published 8 poetry volumes in Hebrew. His poems were translated into Spanish, Portuguese, Greek, and Arabic. And he bears the ASI Poetry Award from the General Association of Writers in Israel. Gad, take it away.
Start again. You haven't heard me. I'm very excited this meeting and welcome all my friends and relatives. I forbade my wife and my son to watch this event because it might intercept with the router. So actually, they'd see the recording. Anyway, this is the first time that I read in English, and I'm rather excited and a little afraid about it. I think my poetry is a little different from Blake's, which I admire. I think he's a wonderful poet. He has a breadth of themes and places and so on. My poetry is rather private, I would say. And let's start, okay? The first poem is To My Kindred Poets. On days such as these, if I am to write a poem, it's only under the condition that I can swap places with the condemned, the noose already around my neck that's about to be broken, and I am to declare my final wish, which is my poem, the one and only, the thread by which my life hangs. Beauty, a sonnet sans one line dedicated to my wife. I fail to illustrate your beauty with my words, as a restorer of a masterpiece whose brush falters when it must touch the unparalleled Virgin Mary, devoured by time in the darkness of the peace, or by the sun that pinks the sky after it has long since set into its womb. I fail to find the voice to whisper your beauty, like my foot, so careful not to trample on a bed of withered leaves of such intoxicating color in the blackest, darkest forest, just before the woodcutter. The next one is inspired by something the first one anyway, it's divided in 2 halves. And the first one I actually witnessed in a way. It's called Relationships 2373. Relationship 23. They were far away from me, the scorching sun glistening nude as a yeshiva student gone astray, dipping in the heretic's sacred pool in the town square, only halfway satisfied, melted their shimmering bodies together as if they were dancing the dance of Saint Parkinson. They were far away from me. If I wanted to capture them, just like saints embraced and burned, they would have mounted the stake of glistening light, and my camera would have stored them inside an urn of white, a temple for a new religion of love. They were far away from me. When they noticed me, they tried to pluck pieces of clouds to cover their shame and chase their voices plucked from them and pinned upon cruel wreath of thorns tumbling in the wind. I love yours, and I yours, deeper, deeper, yes, yes, it's good, so beautiful, so. They were far away from me. But then the eye grew accustomed and the sun pulverized into a plethora of light stamps, which she affixed upon their enveloped bodies, like a mischievous child, to send to a land too far away, too impossible, of a love too great. Relationship 73. His cracked lips flutter for a kiss over her shriveled cheek, as if to see whether that old glue still is strong enough to seal the issue day envelope encasing the wedding day's gift. She will never tire of buying a plethora of dolls in the frosty wind, pulling at the hem of her dress like a retarded son who lost his way home and wants a hug. She will never cease planting doors, erecting luxury apartments with no walls upon the wandering sands, until she find the keyhole to fit the key dangling from her neck like a noose, and that same kiss that opened. At the mobile light, whose battery is dying, she reads his thought. I should get new glasses, she thinks. Before I go on, I would like to thank, first of all, my translator, Natalie Feinstein, who actually rewrote the poems in a way in English. And I would like also to thank my publisher, Chaim Nagid. I don't know whether he's here. We worked together for about 22 years, and I owe him very much, very many things. The next poem is called Rescue Mission. Like a sound sensor attached to a slab of cement of a collapsed palace to pick up the faint bleats of survivors, I concentrate my gaze at your pupils to pick up distant echoes of our former love. And my hand wandering through your black tresses and through the dark channels of your furrows advances with delicate, watchful choreography of brain and heart surgeons, lest other stories crash on top of us and let our souls die with the years. In my mother's drawer. In my mother's drawer, I found aerial photos that mapped me out from afar, from above, untouching, in the language of pain to mother in memory. You are laced in your robe like a brittle yellowing scroll, summarizing the history of your misery. The chapters are meticulously laid out in the furrows of your brow. You were always calculated, everything filed and erased, every load off, including me. We sit across from each other like two worn-out army generals about to sign a historic peace treaty. On your shriveled cheek, I seek the line where the deal will be sealed with my kiss, and try to decipher how to pronounce the word love in the language of pain, if at all. Now, a poem that I dedicated to my grandchildren. Boy drawing the face of God. Boy drawing the face of God. Scared of seeing his face in the mirror or in the still surface of the lake, he borrows the face of the ferocious samurai in a Magna magazine. In his small hand, not yet skilled with a pen, he lingers with the lines as not to digress from them, like a warrior who knows that though this valley is quiet, beyond the hill, the vultures are already reveling. Boy drawing the face of God. The angel of God stands behind him, meticulously tracing along the boy's innocent face and rests it over his face. God drawing the face of a child. Thought. When a thought plummets at my feet, bruised, I bandage its wings, which I clipped, until it revisits me in faltering flight. Then I shoot it again. feast. This was inspired by a wedding ceremony which I saw. One of many, but this one actually inspired this kind of song, a feast. At every feast, at every banquet of perfumed embraces and orgies of raping gazes, the shiny murderers sit with us at the table. A hatchet knife for the fish, a saw knife for the meats, clanking chalices blinding, all destined to be sharply drawn, crushed, stabbed, spilled over the still rugs, frightened witnesses to retribution acts by gangster families. The knife and the neck are separated solely by the calculated, suspicious stare of loving relatives, as well as the host tender, soothing words like boxing referees, forcing apart the fiery rivals to cool them down, only to send them back to their death upon the ring. Are you here to sacrifice or slaughter? The muted greeters ask in every garden venue, and they send you over to the hors d'oeuvre rings, to which you stampede along with the rest of the rippers and the ripped. And something in a total different spirit, a poem dedicated to my father. I offer a compromise. I offer a compromise. I shall grind myself so thinly that nothing but the dry wood remains, and I shall be so shiny that the sun will be blinded by my sight and perforate through me your paper bodies. I offer a compromise. I shall stand in empty meeting rooms as an exclamation mark until the right spirits will fill in the right chairs, until papers be exchanged, either signed or flight, as long as peace will penetrate the crazy bones of this house and lend relief to those entering its gates that gape upon them with a yelp and close on them with a gulp, like a crocodile before he rests in peace. I offer a compromise. I stop a cab and offer to the driver. I buy a paper and offer to the seller. I walk my dog and offer to his needs. I come to the shrink and offer to my complexes. I shall compromise and compromise until the compromise will be thinly ground, until flour, until dust, which I shall bake to face bread, and to eyes bread, and to smiles bread, and peace shall descend on my gates, and tranquility in my bones, munched in the dog's kennels, and relieve the crocodile that swallowed me with a sun and a digestive. One moment. Times Square, heat wave noon. Put on your flip-flops. The sky is broken. You'll get hurt. The kid doesn't get broken metaphors. He'll get hurt. The cat will get infected. He will turn into a guru on the fifth or into a handicap, whichever comes first. Meanwhile, celestial angels are trampled on with earthly boots, trying to pick up the pieces amidst the throngs of feet with their cups to go, go on. In the squares of time, the boss won't wait, nor will the king of beasts splattered on a skyscraper, blinding those who walk in great auroras, dissolving the throne of the King of Kings, about to crash on their heads, while dangling with his last bit of strength in silent screams and a menacing poker face on a hand atop Times Square. And now, at the MoMA, a festival of Buster Keaton and silent films. Notes from the House of Corona. Faint breath of air, blow my way from nature's unreliable ventilator. A sun as pale as a nurse plunging onto horizon after 12 hours without a moment's rest infuses drops of light from a depleting IV bag allocated to me from my dead neighbor who whistled his happy S when he sprayed me with viruses. As I write these lines, my hands covered in white rubber gloves resemble the noble dead of Thomas Mann in Death in Venice, Strike Again, for which they are now broadcasting a promo live. I've decided to permanently discard of my body a virus-ridden surface, salivating poems known for being plagued with invisible viruses on the connotation level. And the last poem, Freedom, a manifesto dedicated to Chaim Nagid, who I mentioned before. Do the right thing. Don't be tempted by the charms of obligation. No man is obliged to oblige, so said Lessing of old people, a man of the Enlightenment who taught us life itself is not enough, that one must conquer the heart's desire, to enslave ourselves to the Moloch of obligation, to pierce our ear to its doorstep, to account rather than count the laughter of children aimed at us, to cordially ignore the flowers blushing at us, to keep the books on the do, conclude, beware of the borderhead, of the fighting squad on the other end of the deadline. Control the heads of your actions on the schedule so that no bellwether stops to stare and dream. Don't step out to your yard at midnight to howl with the jackals. Don't get carried away, God forbid, and burn your place down, and with it all your inheritance, your heirs, yourself, to rejoice like Nero in front of the flames and recite poetry. The range of our voice is enormous. So once told me a vocal coach whose facial wrinkles to me were like the war paint of the Navajo tribe, and in his voice echoed the buffalo drums and the stampede of the beastly herd. We use only 1/10 of it. Too anxious to break through the coral fence, too scared to scare and to be scared, and to plummet down the breathtaking abyss that will gape inside us. Therefore, do the right thing. Scream, wake up the neighbors, curse wisdom, go to staycation. Don't take anything with you, not even the cloth on your back. Remove your skin from your bones. Fear not to penetrate the throat of an active volcano. Trap yourself a venomous viper for a pet, and let it slither down the palace of your brain. Let your children out naked. Don't mold them into bronze statues of ancient Greek athletes. Melt them. Let them trickle like lava that would cover and warm and decimate you. Go on an all-out war against obligation. Destroy memories, notes, electric sheets, reminders on the fridge. Get bitten more than once and don't ever be shy. Sleep with the first person to exit your threshold. Make love to the door, the doorstep, the keyhole, the wound, the electric soakers and crowns. Char yourself. Write with the char chalk of your body. No, no, and no, and no, and no, and again no. Honor thy father and thy mother with a broom and a dustpan. Honor the dust, honor the raging virus, honor the whiteness of your hair, your dentures and spectacles. Hold a one-man demonstration for your advanced age. Summon the angel of death to your home. Be so tired, in dire need of rest. Go with him, support him, pluck out his eyes, ascend with him to the cliffs of Dover. Convince him to jump, but make sure he doesn't crash. You will eventually find out you need him still, that you can still smile at each other with mouth vacant of useless teeth, to join your bony hands and walk together like the first couple that had just discovered love. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Thank you, God. I know both of you can't really hear it, but I'm sure everyone is applauding for both of you. I have to say for, that I would never have guessed that was your first time reading in English. That was really wonderful. So good for you. That's great. So we have about 20-ish minutes for our audience Q&A. So if anyone in the audience has a question, you can go ahead and drop it in the chat and I'll make sure it gets asked. Currently, we have a lot of praise for both. Yes. Loving energy, the lines, specific comments, the reading. Oh, so we have, to start off, a question for both of you. So who are some of your poetic influences? Maybe if you'd like to go first, Blake.
Yeah, in grad school, I learned about the poems from the poet I, who was wonderful and wrote a lot of persona poems, a lot of honestly very angry and violent poems about white supremacy and kind of male privilege and American society. And it was like the first time I'd really seen poetry that could actually do just speak on a common level about things that are really out there in the world. So she was a huge influence in a lot of my kind of personal poems. She wrote about Lee Harvey Oswald and J. Edgar Hoover and everything, and I ended up writing about Nikita Khrushchev, and Sexton as well, and probably Robert Lowe, and the whole 60s wave of confessional poetry really got to me during a pretty rough 2020. So how about you, God?
Well, first of all, I'm inspired by a lot of Hebrew poets that most of you don't know. I mean, the Israelis know them, but not the Americans. So actually, it would be useless to name them. But it's a wide range of poets. I can't actually finger out a specific poet that influenced most. But I'm very much influenced by Central European poems, like Bertolt Brecht, like Else Lasker-Schüller, like Enzensberger, like Bachmann, and so on. I mean, a whole number of poets who actually, let's say, correspond with the culture I grew up with, because my parents come from Germany. So actually, I have the link to these poets. But I'm also, I think, inspired, I mean, by way of irony and, let's say, rhythm, perhaps, so by T.S. Eliot, by Allen Ginsberg, I think. A lot of others are by John Donne, for instance, by Jacques Prévert, by Antonin Artaud, by and so on, so forth.
Yeah. Looks like we're still waiting on some questions in the chat. By all means, also, if either of you would like to ask the other a question, you can definitely use that time to do so as well. So I guess I had a question for both of you. I was wondering, when I don't generally write a lot of poetry, so I was curious about, when you're putting together poems in a collection, how do you go about the process of putting them, together and knowing what poems will work well in the same collection with other poems?
I can't tell you. I mean, it's, actually, I mean, the most obvious thing is to say that poems actually are bound together by categories. I mean, categories of motives, perhaps categories of spirit, and so on. But it's a little more complicated than that. And I mean, when you write for a foreign audience, your calculations are quite different when you write for a local audience. I mean, because this is something that you have to get your message and your images across. And I would say, as a compliment to my colleague here, Blake, that his images are very American, but somehow, I mean, I could connect to them because they actually speak the America of my myth, of my dreams, and perhaps not of the actual America. Perhaps you won't agree with me, but actually that's what I feel. Yeah.
That's very funny considering I read a far poem about a dead Soviet cosmonaut. I think that if you read my entire book, and if you buy it, I actually organized my poems in a 5-part section where a lot of there's like a narrative through line that kind of comprises like a story in itself. It's about a person who goes through a breakup in the beginning. The first couple poems are about that, and then kind of travels the world and this is actually based on my own travels, but and then kind of finds that things have really fallen apart and winds up in needing professional help, and then kind of comes away from it maybe ambivalent, still probably lovesick, but not necessarily better or worse than before, just in a different place. And I think a lot of us can feel that way about how 2020 kind of basically chewed us up and spit us out like that. And a lot of the poems were kind of fueled by that motivation. So,
yeah. Cam would like to know, she says first that she's curious about your book titles, for both of your book titles. So she would like to know about their origins and how you see the book title embracing and engaging with your book's overarching themes and concerns.
Well, I can start. I mean, being a little older than Blake and being in a kind of an age which is a kind of a transfer age, liminal age, a border age between, let's say, a younger older man and an older man, or something like that.
That's great to describe me as well. Yeah.
Many things change, and you try to rescue things from your past, but actually you can't, because there is a change. There's a change, first of all, in relationships between your family members, between you and your friends, between you and your surroundings, and you try to adjust, and you try to rescue things that you salvage from the past, from the ravage, from the demolished past, and which you don't believe it is demolished, but it is, and to bring them over to the place where you are now and try to see and to adapt them to this situation. That's where the name came from.
Yeah.
In my case, I think God summed it up perfectly, where it's like, I might be young on paper, but I've always felt old. And I think when you get to your 30s and things don't pan out the way you thought they might have, maybe as an idealistic 20-something, you do kind of feel old. The title actually comes from a Craigslist post for an old car. I explain this in the back page of my book, but the title comes verbatim from a Craigslist post for an old car, where the guy wrote this because he seemed just so desperate to get rid of this old Lotus, a terrible car by any means. But, the fact that, when you're saddled with so many things, you find yourself at an age where you can't get rid of them, or things can't, it really is heartbreaking. And it does speak to like where that kind of mentality is at, where you are just surrounded by things that you hold valuable, but maybe no one else can. And you have to find a way to cope with that. So I think it's, the car is, of course, however you want to interpret that as, whatever it is, doesn't have to be a actual car, of course. So
Mm,
it's like a state of mind, really.
I want, if I may, add a little remark. If you
Sure.
see the cover of my book, you see there a silhouette of a person walking on a tightrope, which is actually the image that describes my situation, my existential situation now. I found it somewhere, and I think it's very pertinent. It's, very pinpointing.
mhm. I wanted to say just quickly, I thought that was a really poignant way to put that, Blake. And I think I'll be thinking about the metaphorical car in my metaphorical garage for a while now. We have a question for God from Elliot. Which of your poems about your mother and father was the most difficult to write, and which was the most difficult to share?
Well, Elliot, first of all, is my cousin. if I may reveal this secret, I don't know. I think parents are always a difficult matter. You love them, and still you have lots of, let's say, better feelings, hard feelings, and so especially if they are both gone. And then it gives you leave to correspond with them, something you haven't done in their life. I mean, and poetry is a very good outlet for that. It's not difficult. It's not difficult at all. It's relieving. I don't know, my mother, and I don't know what we call a Yekkish mother coming from German origins, and she doesn't know Hebrew that well. What she would have said about that. She called me a meshuggah and so on, so it's all right. But I think that there is no difficulty involved in it, especially since I love them very, very much. And that's why even if I say harsh things, they're embedded in love.
Mm.
I hope that answers the question.
Right. Yeah, I find that, writing about family like that often presents those types of challenges. But Claire is curious to know from both of you, what's the best advice about poetry that a mentor has given you? If you wanted to start us off.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry. What is the best advice about poetry that a mentor has given you? So if either of you wanted to start us off.
I would say all the mentors have given me perplexing advices. Be as short and concise as you can. Be as long as you can. I mean, it's very, very subjective, and I believe and I don't believe in mentors. I believe in people reading my poems, and reacting to them. And I believe in reading my friends' poems and reacting to them, but not as someone who is dictating you how to write. That's my feeling.
Mm.
I would agree with that. I can't really think of anything a mentor has ever said to me other than just read more and try to be present when you actually write. So just kind of the more you read, the more you can absorb, and that goes a longer way than having any mentor tell you like what God said, like, oh, write lawn here, and then you actually, no, don't do that, or do the other thing, because poetry is all weird and subjective like that. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think those are both. Maybe people sometimes look for super concrete types of advice, but I think those are both really helpful thoughts as well. perhaps even more so than something concrete. If anyone else has a question, you can go ahead and type it in the chat. Looks like those are all the questions we have for right now. I'll give it just another minute or two just to make sure we get
in the
everyone.
meantime, I would like to ask Blake a question.
Sure.
First of all, I think your poems are beautiful. They're jazzy, they're astounding images. They're very sensuous and deeply probing and aching and of an epic dimension, as I said, reflecting the mythical America that I have in my mind. They are overbounding, on the one hand, with the zest for life, but also with the forecast of doom. And I wonder, where from does this perspective come from? I asked you before the beginning of this program. I asked you if you're a migrant, that's what I implied, but you aren't.
Yeah.
But your perspective actually resembles that of a migrant, of someone who looks at his own land, or his own country from afar, from the outside. Especially in New York, for instance.
I mean, when I was growing up, my family would take me back to China every summer. And, you know, the one thing to do with all my extended relatives would just be to crowd around and be like, hey, which country do you like better, America or China? And I'd always have to be like, I like them both the same. Because, you know, there is that sense of betrayal where you don't want to, you know, seem like the ungrateful kid who was the one who made it to America, but you also don't want to turn your back on the only experience you've really ever had growing up. So, you know, we're seeing a renaissance today in, you know, kind of the Asian American story. And, you know, we're seeing that a lot in everything from like, you know, Crying in H Mart to Shang-Chi. And frankly, there's a part of me that is kind of resistant to it now, because you do hear the story of like, you know, the Asian kid who was supposed to be a doctor or a lawyer or engineer, then like, you know, didn't do too well and is trying to carve out his own life. And, you know, we've seen that so many times that it feels like it's about to get parodied, and probably in a way that's very cruel. So, you know, obviously I've experienced that myself. So maybe I'm just coming from it from sour grapes, because, you know, I went to engineering school and dropped out of that when I failed Calc 2 3 times. So what I'm trying to say is, I guess I don't really have a point to any of this, but the perspective really does come from, you know, being American and knowing how to write, or knowing how to write about your experiences in this country with so many problems, but you kind of don't really know anything better. And then when you go to like you go back to Asia, you have the double-edged sword of looking like them, but not understanding them. And I think that's where a lot of my travel writing ended up coming from. So.
All right, so it looks like that's all of the questions we have today. Oh, we have a last minute addition. So Cam is curious about the translating experience for you, Gad, and your poetry partnership with Natalie. For those of you who don't know, Natalie translated God's book for him into English. Did you come to any new epiphanies about your poetry through the translating experience?
Very much so. But I would like Natalie to answer this question.
Hi, everyone. Let me see. For me, it was quite a challenge. I translate many plays and screenplays for movies and theater, and this was, I think, one of my first experiences translating poetry. And God knows this, I completely fell in love with his poems in Hebrew, which made my job very easy. Well, not easy, but easier, because it wasn't easy. I think it was interesting because God said before that his poetry is very private. And that may be the case, but it's also very, it's multi-layered, and his inspirations come from theater and mythology and history and pop culture. And so it was a challenge for me to get to get acquainted with his very rich association world. So it was a bit of a challenge for me in that sense. I come from theater as well. So, and Gad was my professor in university. So I come from theater. So I recognized and loved all the theatrical references, but there were a lot of references that I had to sort of learn about. And I also sensed as if I was getting a glimpse into God's inner world, which was, fascinating for me and surprising. And it was very, and in a way also, his poems made me, I wouldn't say made me laugh. They wouldn't make me laugh. They didn't make me laugh, but they made me smile. There's a sort of a thin irony in his poems that I hope I managed to convey or to translate in the English version. So, and it was a very interesting back and forth also with God, mostly via email. And we had this little interesting email relationship going on, which was also very, I don't know, very friendly and yet very professional and amusing. And it was just a very enriching experience for me. And in Hebrew, where God sort of ends the line is, it doesn't end them with a full stop. There's always a trick waiting in the next line. There's almost always another surprise or another sort of the next line reveals an extra sort of an extra layer to what, or the next line always takes you in a different path than you thought you would go down. So it was sometimes the English grammar sort of prevented me from doing it, and sometimes it was just seamless and it was perfect. It was, it just helped me. I was so satisfied when the Hebrew and the English just worked perfectly. And sometimes I had to sort of come up with all sorts of English tricks in order to, I had to sort of fool the poem. I had to sort of, to trick the poem myself in order to make it go the way I wanted to go. So it was a fascinating experience, and I can't wait to, continue our collaboration and just enjoy more of God's poetry.
Thank you so much, Natalie. That's really
Sure.
a really lovely insight to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. And write everything you said now in an article, please.
Oh, I'm reading from the article.
Well, it was so great to hear both of you read, Blake and Gad, and to hear your responses to such interesting and insightful questions, as well as Natalie's response. And thank you so much for being here with us, and your words and your brains and your generosity today. And thank you everyone else for being here with us to celebrate these wonderful poets. Don't forget that you can order I Am Not Young and I Will Die with This Car in My Garage and Rescue Mission from the links in the chat. Please also consider checking out atmospherepress.com to browse our new and forthcoming releases, to sign up for our email newsletter, or to submit a book manuscript of your own. Feel free to submit your work to books@atmospherepress.com and let us know that you attended today's event. We look forward to hearing from you. And that's it. Have a safe and wonderful weekend, everyone.
Thank you. I would like to thank you. the Atmosphere Press, for treating us so well.
Yeah,
Of
thanks
course.
to everyone who joined in with us. And thank you to everyone in Atmosphere, especially my VCFA classmate, Cami.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.